Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grimmett, and let's get to some questions. So the first question I have is, how do we know we are recovering? This is a really good question because you do have to know the process of OCD in order to recover. I think this is the critical part that they miss when when the doctors are trying to help you overcome OCD. They're telling you what to do, but they're not telling you how OCD works. So when things happen, like when you get certain thoughts or when it becomes more intense or less intense, you don't know why those things are happening, and because you don't know the rhythm, you don't know the kind of pattern of it, it becomes much more difficult to recover. Once you know that, okay, if I do this, this is what's going to happen. If I do that, that is what's going to happen. You can kind of play on that, and you can recover much faster. Or you can, to be honest with you, you can recover while, with the doctors, I don't know, people recover, of course, but it's more so than not, they don't, when getting help from somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about, just read it from a book. But anyways, this is an aside. As usual, as you guys know, I'm very disappointed in the medical community. And there's not to say that there isn't any good doctors out there. There is a lot of good doctors that actually know what they're doing, but it's like for every one doctor, there's like 50 that don't know what they're doing, and then they just make the person worse because they're gonna ask them like silly questions, or they're gonna give them reassurance or whatever, right? Because they just don't know that that's not what should be done. So anyways, that was a long aside, nobody cares. So the question is, how do we know we are recovering? So what's going to happen is, as you start to do what I've been saying on shows and things, disregarding the thoughts, you will actually start to get more thoughts. Now, this is a normal thing. The reason why you will get more thoughts is because your mind is used to you having anxiety. It views anxiety as a protective mechanism. So it doesn't care so much that you feel bad. It wants to protect you, and it knows that, like, it's programmed to understand that if you are anxious, if you're seeking reassurance, if you're doing all those things, that means you are protecting yourself, right? Because you're trying to figure it out or whatever. It's not programmed to understand that this is OCD. So it's not programmed for, let's say, any kind of anomaly, where the thought itself is not important. It views every thought as important, and every thought you should react to. When you have OCD, these are just irrelevant thoughts to begin with, so you reacting to an irrelevant thought is bad, right? So, okay, so when you start disregarding these irrelevant OCD thoughts, your mind will say, no, you have to get back to paying attention to them. You have to get back to reacting. You have to get back to seeking reassurance and doing avoidance and all of that. So your mind will try to get you back, and the only way it can get you back to the more anxious state is to send you more thoughts. So it's basically gonna say, for example, you have driving OCD and you get like 1-2 thoughts a day. You're gonna get 5 or 6 thoughts a day. But this is very important. Your anxiety will not go much higher because you're not powering the thought up. And as you know from my other shows too, that you have to power up and give the thought energy in order for it to become more of an, for the anxiety to go up. Now, after a while, the thoughts already come with anxiety. That anxiety, it's now like kind of on reflex, right? But still, when the thought comes in with anxiety, and then you react on top of that initial anxiety with more anxiety, you're kind of multiplying it, and then the next time the thought comes in, it comes in with even more anxiety, if that makes sense, right? So we're not powering the thoughts up, so the anxiety will not actually be higher, but the amount of thoughts are going to be more. This is, it's called kind of like people refer to it as the pummeling effect, and it usually lasts about a week or two. So if you're doing good, like if you really are strong and you're powering through it, it shouldn't last more than a week. So after that, you will actually start to see the decrease, because basically what's happening, again, like I said, like the brain is going to try to push all the thoughts it can at you, and then after it pushes all the thoughts it can and you're not reacting, what's going to happen is the brain's going to say, okay, well, there's obviously there's no more danger, so it's going to kind of drop off. But again, the drop off will happen slowly. So it's not going to be right away where, you had thoughts yesterday and now you have no thoughts because you're disregarding. Because you have to remember that you made the choice to disregard right now, but you've already made the choice to pay attention a lot before. So the difference between how many times you paid attention versus how many times you didn't pay attention is very much towards the paying attention from the past, right? So the brain learned that the thoughts are important. So it will take a while to unlearn. So even though you're starting to do the right things, you might not feel, you might feel some relief, but you won't feel, crazy amount of relief, full recovery right away. You kind of have to convince your mind that the thought is irrelevant, that this is not important, and that's going to take a little bit of time. So just keep on, keep going, and you will recover, but you have to keep strong because, see, if you start this recovery process and you go, sometimes I'm paying attention to the thought, sometimes I'm not paying attention to the thought, then what really happens is it's like you're telling your mind, sometimes the thought is important, I'm protecting myself, sometimes the thought is not important, I'm not protecting myself, So you're confusing your mind further. So you have to, taking it as a real job. So every time you have this thought, you're disregarding, you're not taking the thought seriously, but you're taking the recovery process seriously. And then you will see results. But going back to the question is, at first you will see a lot of thoughts coming in, but they will be switching very fast. That's another point. So they come into your mind. There's more of them throughout the day. They come into your mind, but they're not lasting because you're not powering them up. So it comes in, then it gets switched with another one because you're not doing anything to it. Then again and again and again and again. Just like that, all day long. Right? So as you do that, you will start to see, and then you will start to see in a later period kind of breaks in the day where you didn't have OCD, and you'll say, oh my God, for a few minutes I didn't have an OCD thought, or you know what, I went out and I actually enjoyed myself and I didn't have an OCD thought, or maybe the OCD thoughts were there but they weren't as strong. So you'll have those little breaks in the day where you will start to notice it, but most of the time you will still have the thoughts. As you continue, those breaks will start to become more and more, where they will begin to push out, and then once in a while you will have OCD thoughts. Now, if you have a setback, don't worry about it. You're not dropping your recovery. It's not a giant step backward in recovery if you had a setback over a course of a day. Those will happen. Every one of my clients has had those setbacks. I've had those setbacks, where for a day or two you do the wrong thing. That's okay. But if it's, 3 days, 4 days, if it's starting to get into that territory, then that's bad. You have to now put all of your attention into recovery, and really focus on disregarding. And again, just another question about disregarding that. When I say disregard the thoughts and try to go on with your day, I don't mean that you're going to feel good doing that. You won't feel good doing that. But it's training for your mind. You're showing your mind, I don't want to do this, I don't want to think about this, I want to do that and think about that. So it's not going to go away just because you're making that choice right away, because again, it's working on reflex. So the thought's going to be still running in your mind, but you're making the choice to move on no matter how you feel. And again, the crowning phrase of everybody who has OCD, but it feels so real. I talk to, now I've been doing sessions with people 7 days a week, and 7 days a week, almost every session I hear that phrase, but it feels so real. And when I had OCD, same thing, but it felt so real. So that is the hallmark of OCD. Feeling real doesn't matter. It's still OCD, you disregard it, So yes, it feels real. Yes, it's uncomfortable. I don't care. I'm doing my thing. I'm going to go out. I'm going to do this, 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 and this, because if I didn't have OCD, this is what I would do. And I'm trying to make my brain get rid of OCD. And I'm telling you, it seems all metaphysical and all of this, but it's actually changing your brain chemistry. Over time, this changes brain chemistry. There's been, tests that prove that all over the place. You know, I mean, I don't know if you, I want you to like Google that because I don't want you to get too in depth in it. But if you Google it, you will see that there have been tests, and any kind of mental work actually has a brain a change on your brain. You know, so just because you're not like taking medication or doing something that's like on a physical level, it's still like this is enough that it changes things on a physical level. Same thing, like, you know, they've done a large study on meditation recently where they show that the brain chemistry actually begins to change and normalize after doing meditation consistently. So all of these things help. And that's why I say, you know, if you can't do meditation, and if you're religious, you can use prayer as meditation, as long as you don't have a religious OCD, because then it becomes kind of like an iffy territory because you might be doing reassurance. But other than that, you know, any kind of relaxation, any kind of mindfulness technique really does help slow down the anxiety. Now, it won't get rid of OCD, but it will help slow it down. So I know this is kind of like a long answer and I covered a lot of topics, but those are just some of the important things that you need to know for recovery. I know your doctor won't tell you all this, so you need to know. So I have another question that's actually very similar to the first one, is how do we keep track of the recovery process? And then what recovery feels like. I already answered what it feels like, but how to keep track of it. If you want, just really kind of, you have to watch it so this doesn't become a compulsion or an obsession. So you can keep track of your level of anxiety, because OCD is, as much as it feels like it's about the thoughts, it's not about the thoughts, it's about the anxiety. So what is your anxiety today overall, like over the course of the day? I know sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's more, you know, manageable. But in general, if you had to kind of give an average of the day, what would be that average? Is it 5 out of 10? You know, or is it like 10 out of 10, 10 being, you know, the worst possible, right? Or is it 3 out of 10? So, and you should see throughout, maybe not every day you're going down a point, but I would say at least 1 point a week should happen. You know, 1 to 2 points a week. I mean, 2 might be too much for some people, but at least you're going down 1 point a week. So last week my anxiety was 10 out of 10. I've been really working on it. Now this week is 9 out of 10. I'm feeling a little bit better. So, you know, and keeping kind of like a tracker of that. Now, if you are dealing with a lot of stress, real life stress in your life, this can be really thrown off, because your mind, just like it doesn't understand, it's not wired to understand OCD. It's not wired to differentiate between OCD stress versus real life stress. So if you're dealing with a lot of things in your real life that are stressful, or not necessarily even negatively stressful, you know, positive things, such as, like, say, for example, I don't know, planning a wedding or something like that. It's a positive thing, but it's still stress, right? So any kind of stress in real life can really kind of make OCD worse. So if that's what's happening to you, just know, again, why it's happening. And this is what I was saying in the beginning of the show. These things are so important to know so that, you know, you can understand, okay, you know, I've been feeling worse this week. This is why, right? So you're not surprised by it. You know, you're not really going back in recovery. You're still trying your best. But this week is tough because I had this, and this, you know? So, and as much as you can during those stressful times, try to do, again, just like I said, try to do meditation, try to relax, take time for yourself, be outdoors, don't drink too much caffeine, because you don't want to exacerbate the problem further with not the OCD problem, but the stress problem. So try to find a way to relax from the stress, and it will have an effect on your OCD, because if you're stressed, you're not going to react correctly. If you're not going to react correctly, you're most likely, by not reacting correctly, I mean seeking reassurance. If you start to seek reassurance, you know, it goes down pretty quickly from there. So those are just kind of some of the things I wanted to cover with that question. So the next question I have, when you have thoughts for a very long period of time, how do you encourage yourself to recover? Well, see, when you have thoughts for a long period of time, yes, you've had thoughts, but it's because you can have it for years, but you're not reacting correctly for those years, you know? So it doesn't really specifically matter. It matters from the moment you start picking yourself up in choosing to disregard. You know, the fact that you've had it for a long time versus not a long time, I mean, because I've had a lot of clients. I've had clients who only had it for a few weeks and recovered spectacularly, or I've had clients who have had it for a few weeks and had a really hard time recovering, you know? So it really kind of depends, you know? Timing, it does obviously ingrain the thought a little bit more in your mind, but it's really about your reaction now, you know. As long as you're very strong in no matter what kind of thought it is, I'm not reacting, I'm not gonna let it scare me, I'm not gonna pay attention that what if the thought feels real and all of this, and you know, not dealing with it. It's the thought about my usual theme, so I am disregarding that thought and just moving on through that. Okay, so the next question. Hi Ali, can you give me advice on how to handle self-harm thoughts? Self-harm OCD thoughts. It's hard for me because it feels so real. How can I learn to ignore the thoughts? Please give me some advice. It's hard. It's very hard right now. Again, it feels so real. Everybody who has OCD, for everybody it feels real. So it feeling real has nothing to do with actual reality. You know, the brain is sending, because the brain can understand the difference between a real thought and an OCD thought. It doesn't know, it can't understand the difference. So it's sending you feelings as if the thought was real. So if that thought was real, you would have the exact same feelings. Because it can't tell the difference. That part of the mind, it's incapable of telling the difference. You know, that's why you're feeling like that. Like, that's why it always feels so real. So basically, it's, you know, like you say, how can I learn to ignore the thoughts? You basically just do it to the best of your ability, you know? So it's not going to be perfect. You will still have the anxiety when you ignore the thought, but you just do it. You're saying, okay, you know what? I have this thought about self-harm. I'm not going to pay attention to it. It's my usual theme. I'm not reacting. I'm going to go on with my day. Yes, my day is not going to feel that great, but the next day will feel much better because today I chose to disregard instead of choosing to, you know, sit there and think about it 24 hours a day, right? So the thoughts will still go around in your mind, right? But you are choosing to focus your attention, which you have control over your attention. You don't have control over the thoughts that are coming into your mind. So the thoughts are floating in there and they are bothering you, but your attention is always being diverted to the things that you want to focus on, away from this stuff. And just really doing the best you can, because even if you're not doing 100%, you're still showing your mind that this is what you want to do, this is your intention, and it still helps. So don't think just because you're not doing it 100%, it doesn't make a difference. Any kind of reaction makes a difference in your mind. If you're paying attention, doing reassurance, that makes a difference. If you're choosing not to whatever degree, it makes a difference. So you're still in the race for recovery. You know, sometimes you're, you know, sprinting, sometimes you're going very slow, but you're still in that race. And you can't get out of that race because you're going to start going backwards. So another question I have that's actually very important is, what are some ways I can help my partner understand OCD better, and specifically pure O type of OCD? And this is a very important question. I think I've done some shows in the past about like how to handle OCD in terms of your partners, your family, all of this. Basically, the reality is, and this is, you know, as you know, I'm not a doctor. I recovered from OCD. I've helped people for years now to recover from OCD as well. So I have a lot of experience in this. So trust me when I say, talking about OCD, you know, with people around you never helps. In the long run, never helps. If you talk to your friends about OCD, once you get over OCD and you remember the things you said to them, it is a little bit funny and embarrassing because right now it feels really real to you. But if you think about it down the road when it doesn't feel real, you know, when it's just like nothing, it doesn't make sense, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I said that to somebody, you know? That's how you will feel. And there's no cure for that, you know? You'll live that embarrassment for a while. I think the friends don't really care. So this is when it comes to friends. When it comes to family, your family is going to get very concerned because they have no tools. I mean, like, I'm talking about most people, you know, everybody's situation is a little bit different, but most time, family has no tools to really understand OCD. They probably have never dealt with it. They don't understand anything about it. And you're trying to make a person understand something that they've never experienced. And all they're seeing is, here's my family member who was fine, and now they're just going downhill and I can't help them, and they start to panic. Do you know what I mean? They don't know how to help you. And at the same, like, they don't know the right things to do. They're kind of all over the place, you know? So, and really, you don't need them to help you recover, you know, in terms of actually help you. So with that, with family members, or I'm talking, when I say family members, I'm pretty much including your partner in it, you know, so to whatever extent they're close to you, right? But people who are very much around you, friends is like, that's why I put friends in separate category, because they're, you know, kind of more separated from you. The family is always around, right? So with that, you can go two ways. And this depends largely on how your family feels about it or how your partner feels about it. If you feel like they want to distance themselves from the situation, then let them distance themselves. And this is, again, in my opinion, of a lot of experience, and I see a lot of marriages go wrong, a lot of the relationships between kids and their parents go wrong. You know, it's hard. You know, there's not a lot of people who actually have supportive families, to be honest. Like, I see it from time to time, but it's rare, you know? So if you are one of those people, you should consider yourself very lucky that somebody cares about you know, to that extent when you are feeling that bad. And, you know, we always want to think that when we fall down, when we have a hard time, especially with our health, our loved ones will support us. And a lot of the times that doesn't happen. You know what I mean? And it's not that it doesn't happen because the person doesn't care about you. It's more so that they're just like, they're lost. They don't know how to help you, and they start to get overwhelmed with the situation, you know? So it's more that than anything else. So I would say try not to judge them for it as much as you possibly can. And if you feel like they do want to distance themselves from it, if they don't want to help you, then I would suggest that the best advice is to distance themselves from it. Like, if that's what they want to do, let them do that, you know, because they're not going to be much help to you anyways, you know. And I would kind of try to stop yourself from talking too much about your OCD to your family members, because usually what happens is it turns into reassurance, and they are a real person, you know, so who knows what they're going to reply. When you seek reassurance from them, they can make your OCD worse by saying the wrong thing, something you don't expect, you know. So it's very, very important for you to kind of like hold off on not doing reassurance. Now, if they want to get involved and help you, if you're one of those lucky people, what they can do is they can stop you from seeking reassurance, and they can try to pull you out of it, because it's very obvious when a person is having OCD thought. Like, the person who has OCD is trying to kind of be like a little bit sneaky about it, like, you know, but to everybody else, the person just like froze in time, basically, you know, they're not moving their head, they're just in thought, right? So it's very easy to tell. So in those moments, they can say, hey, you have to get back to not seeking reassurance. What are you doing? Stop going over it in your mind. Stop paying attention to it. You know, let's go outside. Let's do this. Let's do that. So they can kind of help you in those difficult moments, you know? And if they are like that, and if they want to help, really, maybe, you know, if you bought any of my books, right? Giving them the book and really kind of so they understand the mechanics of OCD, or having them listen to these shows, right? So they understand how OCD works and how they can help, you know, and that they absolutely, under no circumstances, can they give you reassurance or help you avoid, like, especially with physical OCD, right? With like say cleaning OCD or something like that, the person will be like, well, can you do this for me, because I can't, because I have OCD, you know, and that's really bad. So the person, the family member has to say, no, you're gonna do this yourself because this is OCD, and by not doing it, you're making your OCD worse. So those are the ways that they can help if they want to. If they don't, just let them be. You'll recover on your own. You don't really need anybody else to recover. So the next question I have is, why does OCD feel worse in the mornings? And the reason why it feels worse in the mornings is because in the morning, your serotonin levels are at their lowest. It's just by nature. This is how the body is created. And then your cortisol is very high, and cortisol is a stress hormone. This is just the two that I know about. You know, I'm sure there's actually a lot more, obviously, that's happening, right? But just with those two basic things, that's already setting you up for a disadvantage. Also, you wake up, you're fresh. There's nothing else happening. You know, you don't have any other thoughts yet. So OCD can really get in there and, you know, really start to attack you. And because there's no serotonin to kind of support the feel good, you know, mood, then it becomes more of a problem. So the best thing you can do is, as soon as you wake up, get out of bed. Don't allow yourself to stay in bed and just keep getting worse. Get out of bed, start doing things, and you will start to feel better. So the next question I have is, if I'm doing everything right, why am I still struggling? And the reason why you are still struggling is because you are still paying attention to those thoughts, you know, so you're still giving them power. If maybe all the other thoughts you're not really giving them power and that's why they're not coming in anymore, these ones you still are, you're still doing reassurance or compulsions, and that's why they're still there. So the next question is about harm OCD. Harm OCD is not any different than any other type of OCD. I know it feels more severe because it has to do with harm, but just like we talked about in the beginning of the show, it's just an OCD thought. The more you power up that anxiety, the worse that will get. So if it's a harm OCD, if it's a cleaning OCD, if it's a relationship OCD, if it's a religious OCD, it doesn't matter. If it has to do with your theme, if in this case it has to be like harm OCD theme, right? If it has to do with harm OCD theme, you're not paying attention to it. Doesn't matter how the thought comes in, doesn't matter how real it feels, you're choosing to disregard. And if you do this, you will recover. Don't make it a bigger deal for yourself because it has to do with harm. Most types of OCD has to do with harm. Even cleaning OCD, right? The person is afraid, if I don't clean, then something bad is going to happen. Harm. If religious OCD, if I don't pray right, something bad is going to happen. Harm again, right? If driving OCD, if I don't, what if I drove over somebody, right? So all of these are really types of harm OCD. It doesn't make a difference. It will go away, but in order for it to go away, you have to stop paying attention to it. So we've come to the end of the show. I will be back next week. If you need more information, you can visit youhaveocd.com. You can also email me privately to info@youhaveocd.com. There's a recovery program there that's available one-on-one with me. There's ebooks, there's free information. So please check that out. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.